Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Mainly Broncos podcast. We are actually broadcasting this during a Denver Nuggets game, and we actually have, I would say, quite a few shows going on. There was the Wild Wild West show that was happening today, and actually the Neighborhood is actually going on right now and being live streamed. Also on the MHRT network, and that is with Bronco Bill and obviously Mundungus, who is also a host with the 5280 podcast, as we all know. So if you guys want to jump on that particular stream, you guys certainly can. But we are going to be talking, should I say, strictly? You said it, to use the pun, mainly the Denver Broncos. We're going to talk mainly the Denver Broncos. So we first things first, the trip was great. We spent some time with family, and I spent some time with my family overseas, and it feels good to be back. And there's a little bit of some jet lag, I will say. There's a little bit of some jet lag, but, overall, I'm feeling pretty good. But Brandon, thanks to you and Bobby and John for holding down the fort last week. And by the way, your pitter patter impersonation, Brandon, was a little bit less than stellar, but that's okay. Well, it's a work in progress.
I don't like doing it, but I can't not do it because it's just what you do every time. So
yeah,
I don't have the energy because I'm not as big of a fan of the show as you are. So
you're not a huge Letterkenny fan. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I've literally seen like half of one episode.
How have you only seen like one episode?
By only watching one episode.
Well, first things first, what was the episode? Was it the first episode?
Yeah, it was the first episode. I'm not going to start watching a show I've never seen before and watch something other than the first episode.
Because I was going to say, like, it's really like the first episode and then you're hooked. Like, because it's really like...
I said half of one epispisode. So I don't even think I finished it. I'll try it again at some point. I'll try it again.
All right. Well,
I got to come up with, when I'm hosting it, I'll come up with my own thing because then I can put my soul into it.
That's the whole point of being a broadcaster, right, Brandon? You gotta find your whole calling card, right?
I just felt like I had to do it. Like it's our calling card, it's our thing. I had to say it, but you know what? Next time I'm gonna do something different. And I got you a little welcome back present here. Just give it a second. And
before we, what?
Go ahead.
Before we dive into our topic, Big E Bronco has chimed in and he said, "Hey, how everybody's doing?" But he also asked a question, and he's asked this question just about to every single podcast. So before we dive into our main discussion that we're going to have in terms of Dalvin Cook and then the other topics, he says here, "I have asked this question here to every podcast. If Russell Wilson only has 25 to 12 interceptions, do you see him being back? Do you see him being back?" And he said, "Myself, and I don't think he will."
I'm just sitting here growing gray hairs because someone who has no business shooting free throws is trying to shoot free throws. That's a good question. And I'm talking about Aaron Gordon. I don't know. I mean, it's okay. It's a much better stat line than he had last season, right? Like I would take that from him. Aaron Gordon, make a single free throw. I'm begging you. This man can't shoot free throws. It's ridiculous. He's a pro NBA player. Anyway, it's better than he did last season, but I need to know like how he got it. Does he look like the old Russell Wilson? Because if he looks like the old Russell Wilson, maybe he even comes out and he's having a bit of a slow beginning, but then he ends the season on a hot streak and he looks like the old Russell Wilson. I think he might be back. I don't know. What do you think?
It just depends on the decision making, because if you, off the naked eye, if you look at his like that particular stat line, the 25 and 12, it's actually not that terrible, right? I mean, it's not that terrible. It's like it's like that probably that like I will say the 25 touchdowns is probably that nice little average, right? If you were to talk about like Bronco fans and if you were to try and like predict a certain stat line like touchdowns and stuff like that for Russell Wilson, that 25 to 28 range, I'd say is about where he, sits, right? Like the 25 to 28. But it's really just that the touchdown to interception ratio. And so it's certainly nice off the eye. It just still falls back on that decision making. Now, I will say the 25 and 12 sits well in terms of potentially that's a nice little balance of potentially what the Broncos offense could be like, right? Because I mean, like, if it's a pretty limited in the touchdowns and the interceptions, it means they're running the ball, they're controlling the clock, and it seems like you are getting a little bit of a better decision making and decisiveness from Russell Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, if he does something like this, then he's definitely back.
Touchdown!
All right, welcome back.
So how do you how did you actually find the video? And first off, like, did you download it from Twitter?
You shit.
I'm not upset.
Magician never reveals his secrets.
I'm not upset. It's one of the greatest videos to ever dawn the internet.
Yeah, if he does something like that, if Russell Wilson throws that ball, first of all, I don't think he would be here with us, but also then he'd be back. That's what he needs to do. So take one for the team, Cam. That's the only way that Russell Wilson comes back is you have to go let him do that.
Sounds good for me. Yeah.
You can plan that for the same day that you do the Oklahoma throw with Melvin Gordon, and then I'll just go to your funeral afterwards.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is like if it's that kind of situation, hopefully it's the situation of like the scene in The Longest Yard, where Adam Sandler, Paul Crewe throws it to the referee. Hopefully it's like a scenario like that. So if the calls are not going your way, like it is for the Denver Nuggets against the Miami Heat in Game 3,
Stop. Okay, so Cameron is watching this. We're watching at the same time, but I have a delayed stream, so he knows what happens before I do. Just don't do it to me. Don't do this to me.
I can if you want.
No.
I could say like Nikola Jokic is injured right now, and you wouldn't know.
I will literally leave the studio.
Anyway, but Biggie, thank you so much for the question. Hopefully that kind of answers it for you. It's definitely kind of like that fine line, though. The 12 interceptions would definitely be a tad concerning, for sure. Like, it would be a tad concerning, but it isn't so much so that's like, the Jameis Winston year, which is like 30 and 30, right? I mean, certainly you got the 30 touchdowns, but the 30 interceptions, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. I think that
let me alter this stat line a little bit. What if it's 25-8 and he has 3 rushing touchdowns?
Well, for sure. I mean, you would feel much better with that touchdown to interception ratio, just even off the naked eye. So, if it's anything less than 10, I think any Bronco fan would be happy with that.
Because that's, I mean, let me pull up. I mean, obviously, we all know about Aaron Rodgers and his allergies. He's allergic to throwing interceptions. It's actually ridiculous. But Russ, I mean, last year he did have 11, right? But he seems to kind of hang out around 6, 7, 8, 7, 9. He kind of hangs out around that 10 or a little bit under range, which I would be thrilled with.
And that's why I think that the 12 isn't that far off, to be honest.
Although, let me say this: 12 is more interceptions than he had last year.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, obviously 25 is way more touchdowns, but I would say I do think he was forcing it several times last season. Sure. And then obviously he was injured and he didn't play every game. But if he, let me say this, like if that's the thing he has to do to get 25 touchdowns, then like, I guess, yeah, I'll take it. It just, that would be somewhat uncharacteristic for Russell Wilson. Even last year in by far his worst year in his career ever. He only had
now here's the question though. If he's 25-12 and the Denver Broncos have clinched the playoffs, that's another story, because it's like you have the 25-12 and he led them back to the playoffs, which meant he had enough decision making and the decisiveness to make the plays that mattered, so that they were able to put those points up on the board and put obviously more than 14 up on the board. So I think that it's just depending upon the performance of when it matters, versus, when it was before.
So you're saying, I mean, I know we're going away with this, but you're saying 25-12 in the regular season and he gets us in the playoffs, or you're saying 25-12 is like his end of the year stat line and we played in the playoffs?
Mm-hmm.
I actually would like that less, because if you're saying end of the regular season, that's his stat line, or like just overall whole year? Because if he's playing in 2 playoff games, right, you get 2 more games on the schedule, and he's still ending the whole year with 25 touchdowns. I mean, I'd actually be kind of disappointed. Honestly, like if you get to the playoffs, you give it your all. You do whatever it takes you get 4 touchdowns in a game if that's what you have to win. Total touchdowns, running and passing. I mean, again, if we get there, if we do that, we get to the playoffs, we win a playoff game, I'm going to be happy either way. Like, I'm going to be overjoyed. But I do think that he could have maybe done more. And again, this is like an incredibly oversimplification, because this could be, we're running the ball 70% of the time, right? You never know. But in a vacuum, if we're playing in playoff games, I'm expecting more from Russell Wilson.
Now, I will say to the follow-up comment from Big E, where he says, and the 25 was total touchdowns with him running and passing, that would be a little bit of a disappointment for me. Like, that would be a disappointment, because that means that you're talking about like that 22 touchdowns to 12 with like maybe 3 of them, or, being rushing touchdowns, right? But again, it still sort of would fall under that same vacuum of when those touchdowns happened. Are they entering the playoffs? Have they clinched? That sort of scenario. But I would be disappointed with that. Is that if it's 25 total touchdowns between running and passing, I would be a little bit disappointed.
I would be disappointed in that for sure.
But
I mean, maybe if it's like, if he has 1 rushing touchdown and 24 passing, I mean, I guess it's a little bit different, but even then, if he's, I guess I would be disappointed, but I would want to know what the rest of the team did. Like, if that's what he did, but we got into the 10-yard line on, multiple times a game throughout the season, and we had, we led the league in rushing touchdowns from our backfield, different story.
And you were also efficient in the red zone. And you mentioned that. So it's just like, if you were, 70%, actually you should be about like 80% all the time, or 100% if you can, when you're in the red zone. But if you can be able to manage that and you're that efficient, then sure. One of the things too, if he is 25-12, and we said it earlier, is that also would mean that the Denver Broncos would be establishing the running game. So it's only fair that we start off with the leading topic of the of the show, and that is the running game. There's some rumors and some certainly circulating with Dalvin Cook and the Denver Broncos. Obviously, it's not saying that it's a formality, but it is something that I think that Bronco fans are certainly monitoring, something that is, maybe they kind of see. And I will say, though, and this is not a Denver Broncos thing. This is not a Denver Broncos thing. Yeah, this isn't a Denver Broncos thing by any means. But I will say I think that all the teams are monitoring the Dalvin Cook situation in the sense like they're not going to trade for him because they know that the Minnesota Vikings are more than likely and are probably, because there's been a lot of reports now that said that he is a likely release candidate and that he's going to be released. So,
Well,
yeah,
here's what I think about this though. If there's even one team out there that is even remotely invested in him enough to give up anything, like I feel like they could also be like, okay, if you're a team, what do you gain by putting out a report that you're going to be cutting this player? Literally nothing except for driving up competition and getting someone to trade for.
or even
drive
up the price.
Right. I mean, if there's again a single team, even if a team's offering a 6th round swap for Dalvin Cook, I mean, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that as long as one team is even remotely interested enough to give up anything, we're not going to get him. Like, I understand that we're interested in him if he is cut, but if there's any semblance of a trade market, he's not going to be cut. He's not going to be a Denver Bronco. Like, I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm not hopping on the Dalvin Cook to Denver train. I think it's interesting at the very least. It's like, oh, that's cool. It is interesting to me that we seem to be at least somewhat in on him. And the reason I say that is, what does that mean about Javonte? Are they like trying to make it more of a committee? Are they, maybe not super confident in Javonte coming off of this injury, which, I mean, he's literally already back at practice, which is insane. But I don't know. It's interesting to me because, again, I've said this every single time, but the more we do things like this, the more it just screams to me, that's all we're going to do. We're just going to run the ball every single time. I mean, I love Dalvin Cook. I wanted us to draft Dalvin Cook. The one interesting thing when you look at Dalvin Cook, though, is he is not going to play every game. That's just not what he does. He doesn't play a full season. So it almost makes sense to add him to a room where you have, I'm not going to say a committee, but you have good players in that room that can run the rock for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to me that we are looking at him at all.
I don't know. This is a weird scenario for me because on one hand, I love Dalvin Cook, the player, too. Like, I love Dalvin Cook, the player. But I also know that, like, when you evaluate this situation and you look at Dalvin Cook and you look at the current state of Javonte, let me phrase this question for you, because this is kind of like how I'm feeling right now. And I asked the Orange and Brew team this, who are now part of the MHRT network, by the way. So, and this is my first, obviously, public welcome, for them, obviously, on the network. But I asked them, and this is kind of how I'm feeling, or I actually don't know how I'm feeling on this. Brandon, do you feel more optimistic about Javonte Williams with the addition of Dalvin Cook, or do you feel less optimistic about Javonte Williams if they were to sign Dalvin Cook? Because, like, there's part of me that obviously feels like, and maybe this is something you talked about earlier, but it's just like, with the addition of Dalvin Cook and the productivity that he can certainly provide on the field, part of me wonders, are we going to see less Javonte, or will it be truly that 50-50 or a decent timeshare, if you will, of carries between all three packs? Because that's the other. That's because it's truly I'm battling right now.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that I'm less concerned if we get Dalvin Cook, and I'm more optimistic. And the reason I say that is, if we go out and get someone like Dalvin Cook, one, that room has it locked down, and Javonte doesn't have to be rushed back at all. At all. I mean, again, I've talked about how confident I am in Samaje Perine. I think he's going to surprise people. But if he's your main guy, you don't want to only have one main guy. If you're going to make running the ball such a focal point of your offense, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, if it were, because if that guy gets injured, what are you going to do? Force Javonte back and he's not 100%, and then you're just risking him more. So I would be less concerned about him because, like, there's more players that can carry the load I'm also more optimistic. I mean, it kind of sucks because I want to see him get as many carries as he possibly can. But the less carries he gets, the more the carries are split, the healthier he can stay, and the more the fresher everyone can keep their legs in that room. Which, again, if you're going to be running the ball as much as you possibly can, and you're trying to make the postseason on that, I mean, you're going to need it.
Right. And so it's just like that. It's just that thing that you're torn with, right? Like, so I don't know. Evening, Clayton. Didn't get a chance to obviously see you on the last show. And yes, to anybody that is listening, listen to Clayton. Smash that like button. Share the Mainly Broncos podcast. Tell your friends and have your friends tell their friends about the Mainly Broncos podcast and all the other shows that are on the MHRT network. And as we said earlier, the neighborhood is going on actually right now on the MHRT network. That's being live, and they are actually doing a watch party, if you will, because the YouTube watch party of the Denver Nuggets game.
I was gonna say there's something else going on with this team called the Nuggets right now too.
Yeah, they're in a pretty big the NBA Finals. They're in and also a pivotal Game 3. And the Nuggets are up 53-48 on the Miami Heat at halftime. So with the amount of game that you've certainly seen from Adebayo and all the open shots, the fact that the Denver Nuggets are up 5, I'm actually glad they're up 5. We'll just leave it.
How can you be a professional NBA player and be incapable of making a single free throw, Aaron? Like, I love you. I respect you. You're a great defender. You're great in the paint. But, dude,
I've always wondered that though. I'm
literally how? Like, I don't understand how.
I'm kind of with you though. Like, I mean,
there's
obviously
no pressure.
Well,
there is comparatively.
You're right. There is no pressure, but there is pressure in the sense that, like,
there's no defense.
It's like you're a public speaker standing in front of thousands and thousands of people, but all the focus is on you. That's basically a free throw. So but yes, there is pressure.
That's already the whole game, though.
Right. But it is definitely something I've always kind of figured, though. Like, it's just you. You practice those all the time.
Do you?
Right?
Does he? I don't know. I can't tell. I would not believe it if you told me that he does.
I mean, Jamal Murray missed a free throw, but we all know that
Jamal Murray missed a free throw. Aaron Gordon misses every free throw.
Right, but I'm just meaning, like, and he also shoots like 88, 90% from the free throw line. But no, I'm definitely with you, though. It's just, it's definitely a mystery why you don't see, I'd say, 3/4 of the NBA, not Shaquille O'Neal, but like 3/4 of the NBA, do like 90% from the free throw line, and like at least. So, so going forward, there was a report that was ran, I believe it was in the last few days, and it was KDVR that ran an article on this that I saw. Maybe this was being circulated everywhere that I saw, but the Denver Broncos were voted on as being the most stressful team to follow in the National Football League. Now, I will tell you, the last handful of years that has been post Peyton Manning has definitely been stressful. Okay? Like, it has definitely been stressful. But my qualification for this, Brandon, is what team doesn't at least experience a stressful season? Right? Because, I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs have certainly been the creme de la creme, the team to beat, right? But it's like, I'm sure at one point or another during their season, they've experienced a stressful moment, right? The fan base during the season or whatever, I'm sure they've experienced some tumultuous and, trials and tribulations of their own during a season. So, like, what team doesn't experience stress, right?
The Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs don't experience stress. They don't know what the word means, which makes me hate them even more. Because all they have to do is exist. And that's pretty much it. All Patrick Mahomes has to do is breathe. And you're good, basically. But
you know what I mean, though. Like they're not.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but yeah, I mean, I probably agree with that. And the reason I say that is like, I know that you're gonna have other fan bases come out and be like, "Oh, well, we've been a pit of misery for 20 years." I'm like, that's not stressful. You're used to that. That's just the shared pain. This team is stressful because, and I mean, I know I sound like a Uber fan right now. Like this is the most fan explanation possible. But this team is like every time there's no excuse for it. It's like, okay, yeah, you traded for Russell Wilson. Finally, we're going to be good. Nope, you're not good. Stress, right? Okay, we fired X head coach. Finally, go back. How many times you want to do that? We fired the head coach. Now we're going to be good. Nope. I mean, I'm almost feel like I'm contradicting myself because like that's still kind of a pit of misery. And at this point, we should be used to it. But it's just so infuriating.
The one thing I didn't get a chance to see was it's the most stressful team in the NFL. Are they saying like in the last handful of years?
I think
Or
they mean just right now. I think like right now.
because I was going to say, if you were to span it over the course of a franchise, I'd say the most stressful team has to be the Cleveland Browns.
Well, that's what I mean. Is like that's what I was talking about. Is something like that is just like, but the Cleveland Browns don't come out every year and suddenly think, "Oh, this is our year." I mean, I guess I could be wrong there, but I feel pretty confident in that take. Like the Browns fans are just, they get it. Like they know it's just rough and they are going to enjoy it while they can because it's football. But I don't know if I would say that they're stressed over it. I don't know. Maybe it depends on your definition of stress.
Yeah, and there is absolutely no doubt though that the Denver Broncos season that has been, when you think about many years prior, it's definitely been stressful. I mean, but I don't know. I guess it just depends on your whole qualification of stress, right?
Right.
And
Like, you know who's stressed right now? Green Bay fans, because they have years and years and years of Hall of Fame play from multiple quarterbacks. And now what? Like, is Love going to do anything? Is Love going to still be on the team? Are they like, I don't know. Maybe this is just, again, depends on your definition of stress.
You know who's stressed right now? Brandon, because of the fact about the Denver Nuggets game 3. Me, because of the Denver Nuggets game 3. And the fact that, that it's just been a little bit of a hit and miss, game.
You want stress? Every time Aaron Gordon goes to the free throw line. That's stress.
Stress is MPJ struggling in game 3. And
he struggled this whole series, man.
He couldn't even hit an ocean.
He can't hit anything. He can't guard anyone. Although I will give him credit. Game 1, he had that sick block. I don't remember who he was guarding against, but I will say he played well there. But yeah, and this is more of a testament to Christian Braun than anything. But Christian Braun's a rookie, and that guy looks more settled in than you do, MP. Like, come on.
But by the way, not to play spoiler, Brandon, sorry about your stream.
Don't tell me.
The Denver Nuggets are up 11 now.
Okay, I mean,
maybe we should.
Maybe we should 48 for me.
Maybe we should just continue to badmouth the Nuggets, because maybe that's the good juju that we need to do to spark a nice little run for the Nuggets in the game. Maybe that's
Gordon. You suck.
That's right. He actually just scored too.
I respect you, but just like, please learn how to shoot free throws.
And actually just scored to force the timeout too. So maybe we should, produce that bad juju.
I think it's probably because who's that guy that is cursed and every time he watches the game we lose? What's his name? What's his name on Twitter? I can't remember who it is, but he's probably not watching right now. That's what it is.
Oh, you're thinking like the whole Josh Sherman thing?
Yeah.
He called out a really good friend who I play football with, Alex, saying that I guess
that's what it is. It's Alex. Yep, Alex V Sports.
Yeah.
I forgot who it was for a minute. Alex, I mean,
Yeah.
I respect you. I love you, man. But don't ever watch this team again, because if you don't watch them, they're good.
That's right. One of the other things,
team, man.
One of the other things we were going to talk about, and look, he's definitely been getting national recognition. So when we clarify this, we're clarifying this in the sense of there's a difference in overhyped and also being underhyped as well. Is Sauce Gardner? It's kind of a layered question here, Brandon, but like, is Sauce Gardner being overhyped? And also, is Pat Surtain, and I can't believe we were actually asking this question, but it's like, is Pat Surtain also, by that same token, being undervalued at that same time in terms of the Sauce and PS2 debate?
Yes and no. Although, honestly, I'm kind of leaning more towards no. And the reason I say that, the NFL, sports in general, but especially the NFL, is kind of like a what have you done for me lately kind of situation, right? Where, the NBA has this problem too, where like the drama, the big names, the players, like the NBA has this bad, but the NFL not as bad. I will give them that credit. But if a player brings all this attention to themselves and gets the drama and the ratings and the attention, right, they're going to be focused on more. Sauce Gardner plays for New York. New York is obviously a massive just market in the media, especially. And I will give him his credit. He came out as a rookie and had, I mean, one of the best rookie seasons for a cornerback ever. And I know like Pat Surtain did the same thing, but Sauce's was more recent. And that's why I think it's being focused on more. It's just a combination of it's more recent than what Pat Surtain did, and there's more of a market there. And honestly, it's just a little bit more drama. Pat Surtain, honestly, he's so good, he's boring. You don't really want to like look at what he does, because all he does is just like stop anything from ever happening on his side of the field. Whereas Sauce Gardner has all like the drama and the attention and like, I don't know, it just, that's what it is to me. Although I think Pat Surtain is a better player, honestly. And I will say I have seen some rankings that have Surtain above Sauce, which like respect.
Oh, for sure.
I get where it's coming from. I just think it's because it's more recent. Like his rookie season is more recent.
And I actually like this comparison from Big E, because it's something you think about. Darrelle Revis was a great corner with the Jets. And at that point in time, Champ Bailey was, now to be fair, Champ Bailey was like nearing the end of his career, so to speak. But they were still really good corners in their own right. But in this case, the only thing that's different is both Sauce Gardner and Pat Surtain literally just entered the league, and they are transcending already the cornerback game, like truly. If you think back to, funny enough, it was a Seattle Seahawks corner, but I think of what is it? Brandon Browning. Remember Brandon Browning, the cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks, who played with Russell Wilson, right? In Seattle. Well, not played with, but you know what I mean. Basically he was that size. Like, he was big. He was 6'2", 6'3". He, had that size, but he also was, grabby. He didn't have like the same, playmaking skills, if you will. He also was penalized a bunch, So there's been these corners, these big corners in the National Football League over the time. But again, like, you're talking about a cornerback room, though, that has never seen the athleticism mixed in with that height. So I think that the Surtain and Sauce stuff of how they're transcending the way the cornerback market is going and being valued in draft circles, I think is completely going to be changed.
Oh, that actually brings me to an interesting question that I have. Obviously, you kind of talked about it with their size and measurables. Do you think that this is going to kind of be a bit of like a run on? You see a lot of teams try to go for that, 6'4" lanky corner, because you know who else is 6'4" who just had an amazing season? Tariq Woolen, who shout out to
another Seattle corner. By the way, we were just talking about Brandon Browning.
I know, right? I mean, that's definitely not the direction that I was trying to go in here. But shout out to Marcus Boggs, because he was a huge Tariq Woolen fan. But I don't know. I mean, do you think that's going to become more of the norm? Like a lot of teams are going to try to go.
Wasn't JC Horn like within that like 6'1"?
JC Horn 6'1". Yeah, he's 6'1". But and that's still tall for a corner. But like compared to like some guys like Tariq Woolen, right? I mean, that's nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, because even then you're starting to see a little bit of a trend with the safeties. Now, it's not a lot by any means, but I think that like Kyle Hamilton, right? Like you're kind of seeing with Kyle Hamilton and Justin Simmons. Now, it's not the trend hasn't been massive in any way, like it is these corners, but you are seeing some safeties have a little bit more of that 6'3", maybe a taller 6'2", playmaking measurables, right? So I think it's really interesting when you look at that cornerback debate. So I don't know, but it's a fun discussion certainly to have, because I think that both players, Sauce Gardner and Pat Surtain, especially Pat Surtain, are putting themselves front and center as far as being that franchise corner, that franchise player, that franchise cornerstone. The thing that's interesting with Sauce Gardner is, I think, a conversation where you put it in the vein of not Pat Surtain, but is Sauce Gardner the franchise player for the New York Jets? I think that's the question when you kind of look at this, is because now that Aaron Rodgers is there, and obviously Breece Hall is coming back from his ACL injury, I don't know. It's just one of those things.
It depends on what Aaron Rodgers does. If Aaron Rodgers pulls a Russell Wilson, then yeah, it's Sauce Gardner.
Well,
but,
I mean,
there's
didn't play great either last year either.
No, but it wasn't as bad as what Russ did. I will say, there is obviously an offensive bias, like just the offensive side of the ball, and especially the quarterback. That just tends to be like the face of the franchise. Even when we had Von Miller, and Von Miller was, completely elite, which is why we ever let him go. Right. Peyton Manning was still there. Right. Peyton Manning was still the face of the franchise. Even when Peyton Manning was, maybe I will say a little bit, it was less when Peyton Manning was like the ghost of Peyton Manning, and being carried to a Super Bowl by Von Miller in that defense. I would say like it was diminished, but I would still say, you look at the Broncos in that time frame, and yes, Von Miller was that leader, and I would say like to an extent he was definitely the face of the team at that point, but I don't think Peyton Manning wasn't, even though he wasn't good, but he was still Peyton Manning.
2015. Yeah, at least in 2015. Yeah, you could definitely say he probably wasn't the franchise player, for sure. I
think it's possible, but is Aaron Rodgers still Aaron Rodgers?
And actually, I can't believe I didn't say his name, but Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson was the offensive rookie of the year. So, I don't know. I think there is a legit possibility that when you have that conversation, and this is not a knock, like truly, this is not a knock on Sauce Gardner, but it's like there is more of a debate when it comes to a franchise player in terms of Pat Surtain and Sauce Gardner, because, we're kind of babbling, but anyway, yeah, I just think that it's
Michael Porter Jr. Yeah, it's a good question. It's an interesting question. I think if Sauce Gardner goes out and has a year like he just did, but Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers, I think it's still going to be Aaron Rodgers, and that's just the way the NFL works. That's how offenses work. That's how quarterbacks are viewed.
So one thing that I obviously wanted to touch on, and because we actually haven't had the opportunity to certainly touch on it together, I had the opportunity to kind of listen to what you guys were talking about in terms of, the Brandon McManus debate, but I actually haven't had the opportunity to talk about Brandon McManus and him being cut. Because funny enough, we actually were in our like airport transport, like getting to the airport, and all of a sudden, I look at my phone and McManus was released. And you guys really had a good discussion about it. And the one thing that I thought was kind of curious of when the McManus news broke was the timing of it, right? Because I mean, like, do you remember back when we were having these conversations before? Obviously, we had joined the MHRT network, Brandon, but like we had these conversations before, and we had described it as we thought that Brandon McManus at least was a possibility to be a cut candidate. We didn't know if it was going to be possible, but we thought it was going to be possible that he may have played his last year as the Denver Broncos.
Well,
at least
he was not good last year, honestly.
Right.
Like he was meh. He was kind of middle of the road on shorter than 50 yards, and we all know what he did 50 plus, right? I mean, as much as I love Brandon McManus, I do think it was the right move, and I do think it was kind of time to be completely honest with you. I mean, nothing against his personality, but the other thing with McManus is like he was very vocal and very loud, and not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you be you, right? But I feel like, especially in a season that already has enough distraction, and I'm not just trying to say like use a distraction. I'm not like doing that, but I will say he definitely was trying to bring some attention to himself, and I understand why he was. I mean, that's just the way he is. But he is a very vocal kicker, and especially when he is that guy who tries to go to the coach and is like, "Let me kick this 50+ yarder," and convinces him to do it, even though that's not the right call for the team. And Brandon is not good at hitting those. I mean, I don't know. I think it was the right move. I think it was time, honestly. I hate saying that because I love Brandon McManus. I think he was a great kicker for a long time. He's still a good kicker, but he was not great last year. And if you're not great, you're going to get cut, especially with the special teams woes that we've had in general and trying to be better in that area. Especially, I mean, we got Mike Westhoff in the building now. If you can't make your kicks, Mike Westhoff ain't keeping you.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but the McManus career arc is a little bit interesting, right? Because I think that people forget, like, Prater was in the building, and then McManus basically replaced him, right? I mean, like, so it's interesting when you look at like the career arc of that, because a lot of people, Brandon, a lot of people, right, like wanted Matt Prater to stay, but because of some off the field stuff, the DUI, they really wanted Matt Prater to stay. Well, the Broncos made a conscious decision to sign Brandon McManus, and McManus ended up replacing Prater, and he actually had a pretty decent year that year. And then in like, and basically, it's one of those to where it's like he had that great year. He had that fantastic year in 2015, right? Like great year. I think that a lot of people really felt like he was the unsung hero in 2015, like the MVP. Have a great night, Big E Bronco. Really, thank you so much for all the conversation, and especially the insight that you had in the comments section. And so if I know I have Call of Duty, and so if we have that opportunity, maybe we can. Call of Duty in years, but you do. You're not a Warzone person.
No.
But in terms of Brandon McManus, though, it's like it is a weapon. Like, if you think to the Steven Kostowski career years, with the with the New England Patriots. Like, it's a weapon when you have a kicker that can. Justin Tucker is a prime example too. Like, when you have a kicker that can hit clutch kicks after clutch kicks. Adam Vinatieri, another
Adam
example.
Vinatieri is still the all-time leading scorer in the NFL history.
Right. So, I mean, it's just like when you have these kinds of kickers that perform in clutch moments, it's one of those things that it does prolong your career. And so for Brandon McManus to stay with the Broncos as long as he has, it's definitely a testament to him. Now, my question would be:
So did you see what Mike Kliss said about that situation and the potential reason why McManus was cut? So, I mean, again, I have absolutely no idea of how much of this is true, but basically what Mike reported was that why did they wait until now to make this move? And his question was basically like, if the fact that Brandon McManus didn't go to any of the teams like offseason conditioning, if that played a role in it at all, because he's a big proponent of the union, right? The players union. He's been pretty much their rep for years, I think. I don't know how long at this point, but a long time. And the union discourages players from showing up to the first and second phase of team conditioning. I mean, I feel like he was in a little bit of a rock and a hard place there, but he's basically citing like the culture change of Sean Payton. Again, you don't make your kicks. You don't want to show up for the team offseason conditioning. Bye-bye.
And this is a separate point. And I know that Aaron Rodgers has done it. Melvin Gordon has done it. Part of me is one of those things, like, if you have a regimen, you don't necessarily want to knock or change a certain, regimen that you're on, right? Like, you really, like, if you have a workout regimen, right, Brandon? Like, and you work better by yourself versus having like a workout partner or anything like that, like a spotter or anything like that. But I think that, like, but then you have like these team workouts. It's like, wouldn't it be better if you were actually in team in team drills to where you can grow as a team, like, and as a unit, and like, so I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like, I always kind of feel like, I mean, definitely it's one of those, like, you can do you, but like,
right. Well, I mean, if I'm getting paid millions of dollars, I'm showing up to the team workouts. Like, I don't know. But
well, and especially, and I get, and so I can definitely understand where Kliss is coming from, because especially in a year where you have a new head coach, you have clearly a new system and foundation that is being instilled within this team. I don't know. It's I would definitely make it a priority to make that good first impression. I mean, heck, Russell Wilson, for as bad as he had of a year, Christian Braun is going off, by the way.
Jokic has 17 rebounds in the third quarter.
Yeah, Christian Braun is going off, by the way.
We'll see.
But
I made a joke during game 2 when there was that time where Brown came in for Jokic. Basically, that was like the best non-Jokic minutes I've ever seen of this NBA or this Nuggets team, to be honest, in the NBA. But the joke that I made, because Brown was like crushing it, was that basically meme of I think it's a GTA. I don't remember which GTA game, but I think it's a GTA game where the guy's walking down the alley. He's like, "Oh shit, here we go again." And my joke was like, the Miami Heat every time Christian Brown checks into the game. And he just did it again. Anyway, but it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much that report by Mike Kliss was accurate. Like, I don't know how much of that actually made a difference. And he did it again. Oh my God. Anyway, but it's interesting for sure. I mean, and that is something too that I'm interested to see what happens because, like I mentioned, Brandon McManus was pretty much their NFLPA rep for a very very long time. I'm not sure who that's going to be now, but yeah, I mean, again, I still think it was time. I think we needed to upgrade special teams in pretty much every possible way, and if you're not doing your job, you aren't going to stay around.
It is interesting too. Sean Payton did say that the Broncos
How is that not a
would
foul?
would be still would be still bringing in kickers. Like they would still be bringing in kickers. And
So what do you?
they did sign
ahead.
Elliott Fry, right? Is that what you're going to go with? Like,
Well, yeah. So what do you think about that? Because he's attempted like 6 kicks in his career.
Yeah, so it tells you two things, right? And you guys talked about it, but it tells you kind of two things. Either they are really, really high on Elliott Fry and being here, or they view it, and maybe this is both. I don't know. But they view it more as they're going to have a kickers competition, right? Because Sean Payton did say that they are going to be trying, I should say, like they're going to be bringing in or trying to be bringing in some more kickers. And Brett Maher worked out with the Broncos or had to work out with the Broncos. Who knows if that's going to happen? But he has a huge leg. We all know certainly what happened in the playoffs. He had the yips in the playoffs. But if you go back and you look at what he did in the regular season, Brandon, he was efficient with a capital E. Like he was great in that regular season.
He was the laughingstock of the league
right.
for a little bit there.
In the playoffs. In the playoffs. Right. But in the regular season, he was truly like efficient. And also, I think people forget, and granted, I wouldn't know this, but when he attended the University of Nebraska, he was a punter. He was not the actual place kicker for the Cornhuskers. I mean, so the fact
you
that
didn't know that,
I'm talking
you,
to
Mr. Nebraska.
No, I knew that. But yeah, so I think that it's interesting when you have a guy who was a punter convert to being a kicker like that. Goes to show you the huge leg that he has. And so if you put him in the Mile High City, I think it would be a very interesting kicking fit. Not a throwing fit, a kicking fit.
I know, I heard you. I'm just choosing to ignore you.
Yeah, shut up, Brandon. Just watch those Christian Braun highlights and, you know.
Brown. It's Brown.
Hey.
Put some respect on his name.
I read what I see, and that looks like Braun.
Yeah, but it's Brown.
Anyway, but I think that he would be a really interesting fit. I don't know if they would sign him, but I think it's pretty clear. I would probably fall more on the latter, Brandon, that they are probably going more with the kicking competition than they are. But in terms of Elliott Fry, though, he doesn't have a lot of kicks under his belt, but you do wonder if Sean Payton values a guy like that in terms of the potential and stuff. But Robbie made a good point, though. I mean, he had been in the NFL, but he was cut like numerous times, right? I mean, like he was cut numerous times. So he's not really stuck in the league, and he was part of the AAF, right? Back when the AAF was the thing. So, but in terms of the move, so when you kind of look at it now, in terms of the signings that they've made, Brandon, do you feel more or less confident now in the offensive line, knowing Cam Fleming is back?
I mean, I'm more confident because of that move. Cam Fleming was like the best swing tackle we've had, and he's first of all, he's one of the best swing tackles to have in general. He was probably the best right tackle that we've had in recent memory, which is not a high bar, but he definitely cleared it and then some. So I'm super happy they brought him back. I'm surprised it took them so long to bring him back, but I'm more confident in that line because of it. I mean, he was still good, even though from all reports that room, especially the coach, was a complete mess. So the more the more talented, experienced, and versatile guys you have on the offensive line, you can't have too many. The more you have, the better you're going to be. Like, that's just a fact. That's why it's so hard for teams to have a great offensive line and a deep offensive line, because there's just not that many people out there. There's not that many offensive linemen available that can play at a high level consistently, that can play multiple positions. Cam Fleming is one of them. And we should just keep him here until he doesn't want to be here, honestly. Like, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah. I think that it is kind of funny that obviously the Broncos have had stopgaps at right tackle.
Band-Aids.
Yeah. Band-Aids at right tackle with DeMar Dotson. Shoot, who was the other right tackle?
Menelik Watson?
No. It was after Bobby Massey. It was Bobby Massey and DeMar.
Bobby Massey. Bobby Massey was pretty good too.
I mean, between both of them, they actually weren't that bad, but I mean, they also didn't necessarily provide the same exact depth as far as the swing tackle. And also, I think that the other thing with Cam Fleming is he also solidifies the loss that you had with Calvin Anderson when Calvin Anderson signed with the New England Patriots. And I know that the Broncos really wanted to bring Calvin Anderson back.
Yeah, I mean, respect Calvin Anderson for getting some.
Right. But so I this definitely feels like more of the Calvin Anderson replacement in the sense of like truly that guy that can be that swing tackle. However, you do wonder where a guy like that would fit, right? And so I think it's one of those. Is it going to be, because obviously they went out and got that right tackle. They went out and got Mike McGlinchey. They obviously have Garrett Bowles, and who knows what happens with Garrett Bowles. We also kind of saw when Garrett Bowles went down, Fleming played pretty decent at that left tackle spot, and even somewhat at that right tackle spot. He can definitely play guard, but he definitely seemed like he was much more suitable and comfortable playing the tackle spots than he was the guard. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Broncos, and especially Zach Strief, views Fleming and the potential depth that he is on this team.
I mean, yeah, when you lose Calvin Anderson, like, you have to do something for sure. Like, again, the more depth you have, the better. And I like Calvin Anderson a lot. I do. Honestly, I think Cam Fleming is a better swing tackle. Not going to lie. I mean, Calvin Anderson works his ass off, and I respect the hell out of him, and I think he's a good player. And I would have liked to keep him, but I also really like Cam Fleming, and I think Cam Fleming did a great job when he was here.
Too. A little bit frustrating too. Fleming is definitely the more seasoned vet, and Anderson had obviously some youth to him.
Which is, I mean, not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're trying to upgrade the offensive line, you're going to probably do better when you have guys that have been in the league for a little bit.
100%.
At least in the short term.
So, anything else as far as like news for you that may be NFL related, or anything that is Broncos related that maybe have caught?
I mean, not really. I mean, we're kind of in the dead season. There's some news for you, NFL related. We are now less than 100 days away.
We are officially less than 100 days away.
Need it. I'm so sick of the dead time of the year. But I mean, the Nuggets are in the finals, so this is keeping me pretty happy. But it's not going to last for much longer. So I'm going to need some sports here, man.
Well, this is why we have the Denver Nuggets, and maybe the Nuggets saw this opportunity. One, they're really good and have been really good since December, but I mean, hey, maybe they're looking at this opportunity as if, it's a dead period for the Denver Broncos. So let's use this opportunity and go to the NBA Finals and have something to talk about, right?
Yeah.
I'm joking. But so real quick on
real.
yeah, right. It'll be really interesting to see though what
I
happens with the
realized
Denver
Kendrick
Nuggets.
Perkins. Why are you here? Sorry. What?
Right. It is funny how JJ Redick of all people became one of
Oh, I love JJ Redick.
like one of the like
Best
favorite
NBA,
in terms, like true
analysts.
reporter, if you will. And it is also funny how they just refuse to believe in this Nuggets team, even though they are in the NBA Finals.
Because they're not called the Lakers, and because
That's
they don't
right.
have a LeBron James on. That's so stupid. The NBA is absolutely garbage at promoting itself. And Kendrick Perkins coming out and saying, "Oh, Jokic is great. We should market him more." Bruh, you're the one that talked trash about him for 99% of the season. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Go sit down.
And,
Go sit with Mark Jackson, who couldn't even put him in his top 5 MVP votes.
and actually questioned this whole idea about race and everything with
Oh
Nikola
my God.
Jokic.
The second that happened, there was no way Jokic was winning. No
Yeah.
way. Even though he deserved it, he's a better player than Embiid this season. I like Embiid. I think Embiid's a great center. I think Embiid deserved to win. I still think that Jokic is a better player right now, and I still think Jokic should have won. And then this whole thing of like, oh, well, if you give him 3 MVPs in a row, you're putting him in the all-time great conversation. Just say you've never watched him. Just admit it. Lisa Salters literally said she'd never watched him before game 1 of the LA series, which my respect for Lisa Salters, by the way, rock bottom. My respect for Charles Barkley this season has gone way up because Charles Barkley tells it like it is. And even though, his golf game may not be where it should be, although it's gotten better, I respect Charles Barkley more.
By the way, Christian Brown is having a really, really good game right now.
This guy, all this guy does. Okay, it literally says on her last name pronounced Brown. It says that on the game. Okay, you have no excuse. But Christian Brown, all this guy does is win championships. He's a rookie in the NBA. He won a championship in college. He won a championship in high school.
Bill Self, University of Kansas. I mean, they turn out really good players. Obviously they're playing the Miami Heat, and the Miami Heat had another former Kansas point guard who was, oh my gosh.
Don't tell me. Is it good or bad?
God.
Don't tell me.
Oh
is it Christian Brown?
Yes.
Tell me that. Okay.
You'll see in a bit, but yeah. Oh man.
I wonder. Okay, if it doesn't happen on this series, then I have to be or on this possession, I have to be a couple possessions behind you.
This dude is like, oh my gosh, he's like in his early 20s.
Oh, that was a pass. Yeah, that's it. Ooh.
What's your score?
90-72. Is that not it?
You're not there yet.
Well, Jamal Murray just did a fadeaway 2-hand bullet pass to Christian Brown.
Hey, you're not there yet, pal.
That's not it? Oh, man. All right.
You are really delayed. Where are you watching this? Are you watching it on ESPN?
I'm not going to say it because then I'm not going to be able to get it anymore. I don't want the FBI to take this down. FBI agent in my computer.
The FCC, you're the internet FCC, if you want to call it that. Yeah. But this is insane.
The fact that we can't watch this team play because of old, fat, rich white men is insane. Okay, well, now he just made a ridiculous layup. Was that it?
Yes. 93-72.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. On Jimmy Butler, mind you.
Well,
but I think that this is the point that continues to need to be driven home and hasn't been the case for the Denver Nuggets. Hasn't been the case for the Nuggets truly in many years past, is that this team is truly deep. When you think back to
Christian Brown has 13 points.
When you think back to kind of the team that they had in 2009 with Melo, right? That was the best team that George Karl ever had. And it was one of the best Nuggets teams we've ever had. But if you look at this particular Nuggets team, you're talking about just an incredibly deep team and a balanced team. So much so that when you have a really bad game in the sense of like MPJ and Nikola Jokic obviously being the true facilitator of that, it just everything falls into place for this team. So when you have basically a true dynamic duo that almost rivals in a different fashion Amari Stoudemire and Steve Nash, right? As far as like a pick and roll duo of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic in a different fashion, because obviously Steve Nash was like the John Stockton, Karl Malone, if you will. But like, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic are like a dynamic duo of like, Steph Curry and Dirk Nowitzki, if you will. Like it's just like it's just an absurd combo when you think about it, because you have Murray who can go for 40, Jokic who can go for 40 and get you a triple double. And I think the other part of the underrated game for Murray is that he also provides those rebounds. So it's that added benefit when you have that complete team. And then you have Aaron Gordon, and we hated on him earlier and everything, but it's just
Aaron Gordon's having a game. Michael Porter Jr. he's pretty good defensively right now, but him and KCP, got to get more from them. Thank God for Christian Brown, man. But this Nuggets team got here because of something that almost no coach or even media in the NBA wants to admit or say. And it's actually laughable because this is part of the NBA's problem. The NBA, like I've mentioned before, is so fixated on superstars and drama and names, right? The whole thing is about, what if this player went to this team? Like, just because that player goes there, suddenly they're a championship contender. Like Chris, CP3 when he went to Arizona, they just cut CP3, first of all, which is the right move. And then you look at like the Anthony Davis, LeBron James thing, right? And then the whole what if LeBron James went to, I think it was Dallas or something. Like they're so fixated with that, with the whole immediate impact. And they want what they want, and they want it right now. When really, when does that work out? Almost never. I mean, you definitely do see in the NBA specifically, it's a sport that you can add a superstar to a mix and you can get very quick results. But it's not something that is always, it's just a cure-all. You're not going to always be like, if we just had this one player, we're good. The Denver Nuggets have gotten here because they've played together for a long time. The reason that Jokic and Murray are the most unstoppable two-man game you've ever seen, aside from the fact that Jokic is the best player on the planet and Murray is a very, very, very good guard, they know each other. They've played with each other for so long. They know what the other person is capable of. They almost know what each other are thinking. They can read each other's minds almost. Like they have that chemistry that only comes from playing together for a long time. We talk about in the NFL, that has the offensive line had enough time to gel when you add a new body in there, right? But people in the NBA seem to gloss over that fact because it's all about big names and big names making big moves, when really it's about chemistry and it's still a team game.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that just has true. Well, here's the ironic thing about this. The national media fell in love. Now, granted, they won a few NBA Finals championships, but what was one of the biggest talking points, Brandon, about the San Antonio Spurs? With Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and Tim Duncan, as far as like a trio there, it was about also the team basketball that they presented. The San Antonio Spurs under Greg Popovich at that point in time, like they were a beautiful passing and team-oriented offense. Like it was just, it was so beautiful to watch. And so it's funny to see the national media gravitate to this idea that the Denver Nuggets aren't exactly darlings, but yet you have the Denver Nuggets who are operating in the same vein as the San Antonio Spurs, which is that just the brilliant passing offense that is, not to quote the Hoosiers line with Gene Hackman, but it's like the team operating in one single unit, right? And so it's just like, so it's just funny how now you see it come full circle, and then you see this idea that the Nuggets are operating with it, and then you add in the same vein of Nikola Jokic just being that the unselfish superstar. And it's funny to see Kevin Durant delete the tweet that he did. He should never have deleted the tweet.
I don't even know why he deleted it. That's not even a hot take or even an insulting take. It's just the most true statement of all time. He basically was like, Jokic doesn't care about being a superstar. He just wants to play ball and go home and go back to Sombor. I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, go back to his horses. Like, why would you even delete that? It's one, it's true. Two, it's like a compliment, if anything.
Right. And so that's why I think like the San Antonio Spurs comparison in terms of like the team basketball perspective, I think is like such a fun comparison because the national media gravitated to them. Right. And then granted, Greg Popovich was at that point in time considered maybe the greatest NBA coach of all time. And he's still widely considered one of the greatest NBA coaches we've ever seen. But like that was a big staple for them. Like that was a big staple for that team, was like truly like team passing offense and creating open shots and getting that extra opportunity, that extra shot. Right. And so it's just funny to certainly see that. So, well, with that, it's probably time that we wind it out. And with 6.5 remaining on the live version, we should probably continue to watch the rest of the Denver Nuggets game. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Mainly Broncos podcast. We were able to talk about obviously some Denver Nuggets as well, and maybe be distracted by some Denver Nuggets Game 3 basketball. But anyway, thank you guys so much. We did have some fun conversation in terms of Pat Surtain, Dalvin Cook, Brent McManus as well. But again, thank you guys so much for sticking with this and enjoying the show. But we'll be back with some more on the Denver Nuggets and the Denver Broncos on our very next episode of the Mainly Broncos podcast. And hopefully the Denver Nuggets are in a great spot with the NBA Finals and where things are going. Right now it's a pivotal Game 3, and the Nuggets are in the lead. So have a good one, everybody, and we will see you on the other side.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.